What's a nice girl like me doing in a business like intimacy coaching? Well, there's a story to tell, let me tell you. I started out in this industry, really, if I'm completely honest, when I became an exotic dancer. People who go into strip clubs, not all of them, of course, everyone goes to strip clubs for different reasons, but a lot of people who go to strip clubs go because they are lonely. They're bored, they're lonely, they don't want to be alone. They want to be, they're mostly men, of course, and they want to be surrounded by beautiful women who are paying attention to them. They really just want a distraction from their lives, and it's usually because of a lack of intimacy. Even the ones who are in relationships, often, not always, there are people who have healthy relationships and hang out at strip clubs, but the majority are not in very healthy relationships. So they're coming to the strip club to experience intimacy in a way that they know how without becoming too vulnerable and um, without having to do it really one-on-one in the context of a relationship. And this is a common issue for people in general, not just people with disabilities or ostomies, but people in general struggle to be vulnerable in relationships. And this creates disconnection and dissatisfaction and clashing and conflict or lack of bonding. And so both partners in the relationship look for it and try to seek that in some way. And often you'll see one partner trying to get it from the other partner, but they won't give it. They won't give it. They want to be vulnerable, they want to have intimacy, but there's something blocking them from feeling safe enough to let those walls down with someone they really care about. So that's a huge thing that people don't realize. They think they're just dating a jerk, but they're actually dating someone who is just incapable for whatever reason, usually trauma and fear. They're unable to let themselves experience vulnerability. So that's one part of my history and how I became an intimacy coach, what I'm doing now today. Another big part is I almost died. I almost died from a vaccine. It didn't almost immediately kill me, although my symptoms were debilitating and disabling. But in 2008, I had a twin Rix vaccine, which is a Hep A B shot. And it was recommended for my work. I was working as a community support worker in a transition house that the people that would access our services had multiple barriers. And that means that they had many different challenges were facing, usually addiction, mental health, homelessness, and a multitude of other trauma, PTSD, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of multiple barriers is what how we referred to them at the time. I don't know if that's politically correct anymore. But it was recommended at that time that I get the Twinrix vaccine, which is the Hep A B shot. And it devastated my health. It almost immediately took my health away. After the first shot, I didn't feel good. I started having like gastrointestinal system symptoms, which ultimately, of course, led 4 years later to my first ostomy and my first emergency surgery. So my health declined really quickly, but that had two profound impacts on me. One, it made me become this person that a lot of society hated because I started to research vaccines, and I'd always been full on vaccinator, vaccinated myself, vaccinated my kids. I got the vaccine because it was recommended. It wasn't required, just recommended. And I went and I got it. And I became really ill afterwards. And this can happen to people. I didn't know that. No one ever warned me that this could happen. I just shake my head now. So that impacted me in the way of now all of a sudden I'm uh, ostracized by society because I'm questioning vaccines. And I had been ostracized by society before when I was a stripper. So I was used to being ostracized. And that was actually at the time, I felt like that was fine. But I didn't know that over the years it would be a recurring issue in my life. But it caused isolation. It caused me to feel isolated and put walls up around myself. So that was another kind of like huge impact on my road to becoming an intimacy coach. Probably the most profound experience that I had that led almost like in a straight line to me becoming an intimacy coach was when I had my first emergency ostomy surgery. I was in a difficult relationship. I had three young children, and I was so sick for like 3 years after that surgery. I just never recovered. I did recover, like I started to recover, started to feel better enough. About 3 years into that relationship, I left it and ended that relationship, which was the smartest thing I could do. However, in that 3 years, when I was at the sickest I've ever been in my life, and I was in and out of the hospital, and I was like just struggling to get through every minute of every day and try to be a mother, and just so much going on that I won't get into. But I wasn't touched that whole time. And even the touch that a mother usually has with their children was reduced dramatically because of my surgeries, issues with my wounds not closing, the pain, the frailty that I was in after my surgery. And then um, a few months after the reversal, because the first ostomy I had reversed, I developed disabling arthritis in every joint in my body. So just touching me hurt. And so I pulled back a lot from touch with even my children. And my partner, he was the type of person, but even before all this went down, who he really only touched me when he was looking for physical intimacy. So he never touched me, and I never touched him. The relationship was rocky anyway. But being that sick, that helpless, that vulnerable, and not feeling supported and not feeling protected and not feeling loved and not having anyone show me tenderness or touch me, that led to severe touch starvation. I didn't realize that I had it until the first time I was touched later after I left the relationship and had been out of it for some time. But when I realized that because my reaction to being touched the first time was so dramatic, that I immediately wanted to research it. I was like, what's going on here? And even the first several times that I engaged in physical intimacy with a new partner later. And there were aspects of this new partner that really facilitated uh, an opening of my soul. And also just the experience that I'd been through of being sick for 3 years and slowly healing enough that I could have a life, that I could even meet someone and even have a romance and have physical intimacy. Like the journey to get there was so fraught with pain and suffering. So it was just really profound, and the person that I was with was very loving type of person. So it opened something inside of me, and I just was crying. I was trying to hide that I was crying, of course. And in moments when I was alone, I examined that and I researched it and I learned about touch starvation and how important touch is in our lives. And actually, it was before this. Completely forgot to include this in my story. Before I realized I had touch starvation, I was on disability, single mom with my three young children. I'd left my toxic relationship about 3 years after my major surgery, and I needed to work. So, disability, if you are on disability, you know that you can't live off disability. So, I had to work, and I went back to the strip clubs. I obviously couldn't strip anymore. I was too scarred up. They don't let people with like scars. Like I had no belly button and really deep noticeable scars. So they don't let you dance in strip clubs when you look like that. And I never asked. But I went back and I said, "Do you need someone to do massages?" And at the time, I still had quite significant arthritis in my hands, although I had healed quite a bit from that. using natural supplements. But I had to take Advil to get through a night of doing massages. But to me, it was worth it because it was bringing in extra money to live. And you do what you have to do as a mother, as a single disabled mother. You just do what you have to do. And so what was happening in the strip clubs as the massage goddess, as I called myself, because I think I was around 40 or something at this time, um, early 40s. And I thought massage girl wasn't correct for me because I'm not a girl anymore. I didn't feel like a girl at all. But I thought, I'm a goddess. So I gave myself massage goddess as my title, and I went around in the strip club and I gave neck massages, just necks, like, and some of these men, and I think it was a combination of alcohol and touch, but some of them would literally break down in tears. And they would just say that no one's touched them in a tender way in so long. And I would always make sure to give them lots of hugs. Like I'd hug from behind and I'd squeeze their shoulders and I'd run my fingers in their hair like this. And I'd just make them feel loved, you know? And it just was something I felt like I wanted to do. I wanted to do this for people. And I can actually trace that feeling back to when I was in my early 20s and I had an experience with MDMA, and that is also known as ecstasy. It is a drug, and I'm not proud to say that I did some experimenting when I was young, but I'm not ashamed. But this one experience, it was only this one time, the first time I was high on MDMA, ecstasy. And I started to see the world differently than I had ever seen it before. I actually started to feel like I was connected to everyone. I started to see people's pain. I started to want to comfort people and like reach out and hug them. And a lot of people, when they're on ecstasy, spend time hugging because it is just like the best feeling in the world. And I had done that as well. And it was just so incredible. And I wanted to just hug everybody. It was just it was such, and this feeling lasted long after the high wore off, like for months, and really lasted the rest of my life. Just maybe not as strong as it did in the first days following that experience. But so all of these little things you can see kind of adding up to like get me to this point where intimacy and intimacy needs, the importance of intimacy and touch in people's lives have led me to this point where I wanted to make a difference for people. I originally had started out doing intimacy coaching, just generalized for anyone. But I've recently turned my focus onto people with ostomies because of my experience getting a permanent ostomy 2.5 years ago. I now have a permanent ostomy. I'm single. I am dating, and I also provide intimacy coaching. A lot of what my coaching looks like is helping uh, married guys with ostomies who are in relationships with spouses who don't seem to show an interest in intimacy anymore, and trying to help them navigate that and ignite that spark again. And surprisingly, it's easier than you might think. Other people that I work with are people who are going to be having an ostomy surgery and they're having a lot of fear about how they're going to feel about their body or their attractiveness afterwards. Some of my clients are single, they have ostomies, but they haven't found the courage to date or to get out and meet people because they feel that their bag makes them less desirable. And so I had this fear too, 2.5 years ago. I had this fear. And I was determined not to let this ostomy surgery destroy me because the first one had really impacted my self-esteem. Like I wouldn't even leave the house. And the bag farting was like, I would literally cry if the bag farted in front of people. That's how devastating it was for me the first time. And I didn't have a real support system around me at that time. I had people who loved me, but they thought my husband was taking care of me. And my husband wasn't a terrible person or isn't and still isn't. But he just didn't have those skills, those caretaking skills that I really needed at that time. And we just weren't really a good match. So it was a really, really tough time in my life. The whole point is I've learned from my experience that intimacy is not just important for people who are in relationships or people who are lonely. It's it's not like a thing that you only need it if you're a certain kind of person. And I feel like society does desexualize a lot of us. It desexualizes older people, it desexualizes people with disabilities, it desexualizes everyone. And well, that's a little bit overbroad. It doesn't desexualize everyone, but I'm just the people I'm thinking of, everyone in those groups. And it's just very common and natural. It's kind of like children do with their teachers. They can't imagine their teachers going to the bathroom. And that's what I think like normies, as we can call people who haven't experienced any devastating health tragedy in their life. Normies like that, they can't relate, they can't understand, and they shut off the humanity that exists inside us. And it's not intentional, and I'm not dissing people who do that. Health professionals are really bad for doing that. And I think a lot of them even feel like disabled people should just be grateful for any health care we get, and we shouldn't have to have our privacy respected or our schedule respected or anything respected about ourselves because we're just sick people who should be grateful for whatever we can get. So these are the kinds of attitudes that push us, people with ostomies, people with disabilities, into these like little boxes of intimacy fear because, well, everyone else thinks I shouldn't be doing it, so I guess I shouldn't be doing it. Or I want it so bad. Why? What's wrong with me? But the truth is, we as humans have a innate need to connect with other humans. And the most impactful way to connect is through touch. And so non-sexual touch, like hugging and shaking a hand, patting someone on the back, putting your hand on their knee, um, touching their hair. These are all non-sexual ways of creating intimacy through touch. But, and you can do it with almost anyone, obviously, not a stranger, not obviously someone who hasn't consented or doesn't want you to touch them, you don't do it. But your mother, your child, your lover, most people in your circle will welcome a loving, tender touch that is non-sexual. So that is powerful. That's powerful touch. It really is. And that alone can bring some people to tears who never get touched. The other thing is sexual touch. Sexual touch obviously is the most impactful because I mean, I believe that it's a spiritual thing. It gets you out of your head, it gets you fully physically present into your body, and then you have a meeting of energetic desire. And all of this is happening at the same time. I mean, it's powerful. It's so powerful. So it's no wonder that people do crave it, especially when they don't have it in their lives. The sad thing is when it's been so long that they don't crave it anymore. They've just gotten used to not having it. And then their body is missing out on those physical needs of touch and connection. And hopefully if you're in that position and you're not getting physical intimacy, sexual or otherwise, that you're trying to get energetic intimacy through connecting with people in conversations, by doing something, helping someone, and other ways that you can connect energetically. But I still think that touch is very important. And so what I do is I help my clients find ways to increase the touch that they're getting in their lives, whether that means seducing their spouse, or if it means accessing an intimacy surrogate. There's lots of different ways. Or if someone decides they're just going to try to increase the non-sexual touch in their lives, and that makes a big difference. So I think I've babbled a little bit too much about why I became an intimacy coach and what led me to this moment. I'm not trained to be an intimacy coach. I do have life coach certification, but I don't have intimacy coaching certification. The intimacy aspect of my coaching comes from my lived experience as an exotic dancer, a massage goddess, a person who's been through a lot of suffering and trauma medically and otherwise, um, broken relationships, single mother, and I've been through the touch starvation. And I also conquered my fears about my body and intimacy with my ostomy. So I have the tools to help other people do the same. If you have any other questions or any suggestions for things that I can talk about on my YouTube channel, let me know.